Hello, y'all. This is Teensy Vintage, and I am Teresa. Thanks for joining me today. Today, we're going to make a collage, mixed media here with the Quartet of Ladies and some various papers. I've got an apartment blueprint sketch. I've got some text, just whatever was laying around by my desk. And I just was like, oh, we're just going to start pasting things down. This is a piece of heavy cardstock. I don't remember the weight of the paper, but it can handle all of the ink and glue that I'm going to throw at it. This is a piece of scrapbook paper. It had some text on it, and I just wanted things that were kind of neutral, but kind of interesting. Remember, this is the background, so it doesn't need to be crazy or wild. It can be, if that's your jam, but for this piece, I really wanted the women to stand out. So I'm just tearing pages here to whatever shape or size I need and gluing them down with my glue stick. I like the glue stick for this process because it's not gloppy. It won't cause your page to wrinkle or ripple, and it will dry fairly quickly. I thought I was going to end up using the picture of this apartment building in the piece, but it just didn't really fit. So I'm going to save that for another project in the future. I tried really hard to get that to work, and frankly, it just wasn't going to work. That's okay. We'll put it aside. I went to an old book here, pulled out a page, and I'm going to use some of this book text instead. I decided to go ahead and change the orientation of my paper because I just wasn't finding anything that made me happy in the portrait orientation. So I have changed the page to a landscape composition, and we're going to keep gluing down pages on this in this direction, so to speak. And I'm much happier with this. And I'm just using a piece of hard plastic to make sure all of the air bubbles are out of the page when I glue it down. You could use a credit card or any kind of hard surface. It just gives you a nice smooth finish. So now that I'm really happy with what I have pasted down, now it's time to apply some ink. And I've pulled out some Distress Oxide inks in Mustard Seed, which is the yellow one, Blueprint Sketch, and Mermaid Lagoon. And I'm also auditioning some other colors here. I end up going with Vintage Photo, which is a nice neutral brown that I use in a lot of my other work. So here I'm just adding a little bit of the ink to the side of my workspace and literally just dabbing my paper into the ink itself, and now I'm adding extra yellow with a brush. If you can hear any snorkeling or licking, that is my dog Pinky. She has decided to come in here and bug me. So say hello, Pinky. I'm going to dry this ink before I add my next color. While it is often fun to blend the inks together, I kind of want them to just be their own colors today. And instead of Blueprint Sketch, I've swapped it out here for Uncharted Mariner, which is a little bit more gray than the Blueprint Sketch. And I'm also smashing this into the ink, which is very satisfying, by the way. And had used a brush in a few places there. And I just clean it up quickly, and we're going to dry this layer of ink as well. Since this is the Oxide ink, you could sprinkle clean water over it and use a paper towel to remove that to get even more texture. But we're going to leave the ink as is and do a stencil instead. This is where the vintage photo ink comes into play. And I'm going to use my little sponger, my sponge dauber sponge. What are these things called? I don't know. But it's the little sponge on the stick and is a wonderful way to apply the ink through the stencil here. And this is a Crafter's Workshop stencil. It's 6x6 and it is called Mini Brocade. I chose this one because it is very fancy looking and appropriate to the time period and the elegance of the four ladies that I'm going to have as my focal point. And I am applying 3 separate stencils here just to give visual interest. Okay, so now I'm very happy. I've got a good background going. I'm going to use some white gesso to kind of blend some of these harsh lines together and to push some of this image to the background so that when you're looking at it, your eye doesn't see all these separate pieces. It will just see kind of a continuous piece. The other nice thing about the Distress Oxide ink is that it will blend with your gesso. So your gesso will turn a little blue or a little brown depending on where you're putting it. And since I'm using my finger, I can directly control how much pressure to put down on the page. And we will also dry the gesso. Drying the back of the page because sometimes the paper will curl and that helps it curl back. Now I'm going to use the vintage photo ink to go around the edges just to give it a finished look. I am not sure that this is where I want it to be, so now I'm going to add some stamps. And this is a really cool stamp set from Creative Expressions called Dates from the Past. I'll put all the supplies that I used in the description. And this might be dates from the past 2. There were 2 of them that came out recently. They're really cool. It's just old font numbers. I love them so much. I have used these stamps a ridiculous amount since I've got them. So I'm going in with Ranger Archival ink in watering can, which is my favorite gray ink. It's not as intense or contrasty as the black. I just want these numbers to kind of just be there. I'm also going in with this Viva Las Vegas stamp, which is a bunch of little X marks. And for this, I'm going to use the Uncharted Mariner because I want these to be blue and match somewhat with the color scheme. So I'm just going around and randomly putting these stamps here and there. And we'll put my stamp blocks back. and make sure everything is nice and dry. I'm going to ink around the edges of the focal point here with some vintage photo. And once I'm happy with where that needs to go, I'm going to use my art glitter glue, which again has no glitter in it, it's just the name, to adhere it to the piece. And use a little pressure. This glue dries really quickly, so it is good to go. I've got a sentiment here, and I'm going to use the vintage photo to go around the edges of that, just to help it blend in with the rest of the piece and not be this stark white piece of paper. This actually came out of an old book as well. I found an old large print book at the thrift store. You know, a dramatic novel. So it had some interesting phrases in it. You know, it's $1. Nobody's going to read that book, I promise. And now I'm going to add some Stabilo all pencil to kind of make the ground for these women, so they're not just floating in midair. And I'm going to activate that pencil with a little bit of water and a tiny brush. And that's it. I really appreciate y'all watching. Thank you so much for subscribing. Make sure you share this video if you like it, and I will see y'all next time.